let's talk about Morbius.
So we recently got our second trailer for Morbius, and it had a lot, had expanded a lot on the stuff that we already knew, like how he's getting his powers and how he's developing as a character from that point onward. But one thing that is really confusing a lot of people is the implications as to which universe this is going to take place in.
Yeah, so here are all the known discrepancies that we've seen. So we get a reference to Rhino.
We get multiple references to Venom.
Yeah, so we get references to Rhino. There are references to Venom. We get a reference to a black cat. So the Rhino reference and the black cat reference could be the same ones from the Amazing Spider-Man. Venom is obviously a reference to the Venom movies. The Daily Bugle logo is the same one that we saw in, I believe, the Sam Raimi trilogy, as well as in Venom Let There Be Carnage.
And we also get more of a highlight of Michael Keaton's character in the movies. So this is a very confusing
Yeah.
as to which universe this will take place in.
We also see Spider-Man in the background in the Amazing Spider-Man outfit, but with murderer graffitied over him, implying that that's the Mysterio. That this is the same Spider-Man that is accused of killing Mysterio.
which is which we saw that in the first trailer too. But overall, it's really confusing where this movie will take place. But I think I'm going to put my foot down and say that it still take place in the MCU.
Yeah, I think it will because
which leans more towards the idea that Venom will take a significant role, or not a significant role, but he will make an appearance in No Way Home.
Yeah. So here's my opinion on this whole thing. I agree that he's in the MCU. I think this is all manufactured to cause discourse and confusion in some marketing ploy. And here's my reasoning why. So we actually did get a leak early on, back when this movie was supposed to come out this year, about what Morbius would be all about. And one thing that leak stated is that this movie was always meant to take place in the MCU, and that the Spider-Man and the Michael Keaton and the Daily Bugle and all that stuff are like that in are the way that they are in the trailer to mislead, but in the movie itself, it is actually all MCU. And it's interesting that they say that because this movie was finished before the end credits scene for Venom Let There Be Carnage was ever thought of. Because the Let There Be Carnage scene was done really late into production, done this year.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Morbius, that entire leak came out back in 2020.
Yeah, the fact that this movie's been delayed multiple times, it's really confusing where all of this is going. Because,
the interesting thing, though, about the leak, sorry to cut you off, is that the leak says that, and I imagine this leak is no longer accurate just because a year has gone by in delay. They've probably reshot a whole bunch of things. There's probably things that they've changed around, so take it with a grain of salt. But one thing the leak says is that we know that Morbius is going to go to prison. We see him wearing the prison jumpsuit and everything. Apparently, he leads a prison breakout, and in the breakout, we see Adrian Toomes, Vulture, Matt Gargan, Scorpion, and Cletus Cassidy, Carnage, all escape from prison together. And that is why Vulture tells Morbius, I'm making a team. Apparently, Carnage was already going to be seeded to be in the MCU before Venom Let There Be Carnage.
I guess that would be interesting. But of course, the multiple delays probably impacted that quite a bit.
Yeah. There's also the fact that Morbius, apparently when he comes to New York, because according to this leak, which it probably has been changed already, but after Morbius gets on that tanker thing and kills everyone on board, he lands in New York and he goes into a bar and he sees J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, talking about Spider-Man killing Mysterio, effectively confirming that this is supposed to take place in the MCU. But I do think it is, but I do wonder if these Venom references are actually just put in for the trailer to make it so that the people that are fans of Venom don't lose interest, you know?
Right.
Because that whole, who are you? I am Venom. Just kidding. I'm Dr. Michael Morbius. I think that's a trailer only line.
You think so?
I think that is a trailer only scene.
Yeah, which I guess that would make sense because there really isn't much room for Venom to be included when we're already having 6 other um, antagonists in the movie.
In Morbius?
In No Way Home.
Yeah. I don't think any Venom references in Morbius is supposed to tie into No Way Home.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a trailer only line because in the context of the Venom movies, Venom isn't a public figure.
Right. Because there's no way for him. Because
Carlton Drake died, and that entire fight was remote, and the only general population people that know that Eddie Brock is Venom was Anne, Dan, Mrs. Chen, Shriek, Carnage, and Riot. Shriek, Carnage, and Riot are dead, so it's just Anne, Dan, and Mrs. Chen. There's no way Michael Morbius, who's in New York City, knows about Venom, which is why I'm convinced that it's trailer only line.
yeah. So this movie feels so far away because it's in 2022, and do we even have an exact release date?
January is from what I've heard.
Really?
I've
Yeah.
heard January. I personally think this movie looks way better than both Venom movies.
Well, there's definitely a lot to go up from the Venom movies for sure.
Yeah, even though I really liked Let There Be Carnage, I think this will be better than it. For one, I really like how they're portraying his powers, such as his super speed. Gives off a lot of Nightcrawler vibes from X-Men, or how Quicksilver kind of moves with the streaks around him.
No, of all of them, my favorite was how they interpreted the echolocation.
Oh yeah, where you can see like the sound waves bouncing off all the buildings.
Yeah.
That was also really cool. I mean, I think he's gonna be really cool.
Yeah.
Who do you think is the villain of the movie?
Hmm. Maybe it's more of a Joker-like story where it's him growing as a character.
I don't know. I think the villain is it's so let me see. There's this
Because that would still be interesting. Like him evolving into a vampire would be pretty fun, not gonna lie.
yes, there's this British actor that's in the movie who we see very briefly, but he was walking menacingly. Matt Smith, yes. So Matt Smith, he plays the Doctor in Doctor Who. I think his character is the villain. Just because he's giving me villain vibes. That menacing little walk that he does in the New York subway station in the trailer, villain vibes. I think he's the villain.
Okay.
Do you think Morbius will be in Blade? Because in the comics, Morbius is the vampire that gives Blade his powers.
That would be pretty interesting, actually.
I think they're setting Morbius up in the MCU, not just for Spider-Man, but for Blade. I think that's what he's actually being set up for.
Which I would be a big fan of because there are a lot of people who love the original Blade movies.
Which I really hope that they get incorporated into. In my opinion, every Marvel live-action movie, even the shitty ones, should be allowed to join the Marvel multiverse. As in, this exists in the Marvel multiverse. It won't actually tie into any main stories, but it's part of the multiverse. So if you want to include it in your Marvel watch list, you can, but you don't have to.
Except for the one. What's the character?
Howard the Duck.
How did you know? How did you know? How did you know that was the one that I was going to exclude from this entire watch list?
Because Howard the Duck is a terrible movie.
Thanks, George Lucas.
Oh,
Yeah, he did make that movie.
Let's not remember that. It's like the Christmas special for Star Wars.
The what?
The one where everyone is trying to destroy every single VHS of it that ever exists.
Oh, right, that. Yes, I do remember that
But shit,
one.
God.
I did enjoy the use of the sledgehammer.
Overall, I think Morbius is going to be part of the MCU, and I think he's going to tie more into Blade than he will Spider-Man. Obviously, he will cross over with Spider-Man. I think that's a given.
Probably.
Like he's a Spider-Man villain. That's a money-making story right there. And what Morbius like so character Matt Smith plays is called Luxius Crown. I do not know how to pronounce his name. His name is Luxius Crown. And if that is true, Luxius Crown is a multiversal character in the sense that he goes across the multiverse killing spider people for sustenance. And so with his character appearing, it does signal another aspect of the multiverse. What if it's not Doctor Strange, but Luxius's Crown's interference with things that also helps set off the multiverse? Because at this point, there's like 5 different reasons that happen all at the same time for why the multiverse broke apart. We have Wanda with the Darkhold. We have Sylvie killing He Who Remains. We have Ultron and Uatu the Watcher. We have Shang-Chi killing the Dweller in Darkness. Now we get Luxius Crown and Morbius. And we got Doctor Strange and Peter. At this point, I'm convinced the multiverse was always going to break apart thanks to Sylvie, and all these other things are just bridges.
Would the event in Shang-Chi really be like a multiversal significant event?
The Dweller in Darkness was said to come from a different universe.
Fair.
And the fact that
was it a different universe or different dimension?
They said universe. They specifically used the word universe, which makes sense because in the comics, the Dweller in Darkness and all that is from a different universe.
Okay.
And also, a lot of people have drawn similarities to Wanda hearing her kid's voice through the Darkhold to how Wang Wu is hearing his wife's voice through the Dweller in Darkness.
Okay.
So, at this point, we got multiverse everywhere. Every Marvel movie not named Black Widow pretty much is dealing with the multiverse. I wouldn't be surprised if Eternals does it too.
Yeah.
Like, the only Marvel properties that have come out this year that isn't dealing with the multiverse is Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And that's solely because none of them involve anything cosmic.
Right.
But
which I know, like, to most people, they're the least interesting, but they still are very good quality and should not be slept on.
Yes. I mean, we haven't seen Hawkeye, but I think Hawkeye's probably going to be the best show that comes out.
Think so? Yeah.
I mean, if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up in Hawkeye, it's over. People will
lose their mind.
This will be lauded as the best MCU show ever if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up.
Now that would be a sight to behold. That would be a sight to behold for sure.
Yes. And if Vincent D'Onofrio shows up in Hawkeye, then I'm all but convinced that Charlie Cox is coming back as Matt Murdock in No Way Home.
Yeah. Well, I think that was pretty much, like, the rumor is pretty much so spread out that it's probably happening.
I mean, the rumor of him being in No Way Home is about as big as Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield being in No Way Home.
Yeah, because most people are saying, oh yeah, he's showing up as Matthew Murdock, but not as Daredevil.
Which I'm convinced that's probably what would happen.
Because, I mean, yeah, probably Tom Holland's Spider-Man needs a lawyer. That's fair enough.
Yeah, and I cannot see any way a Matt Murdock could keep up.
Yeah.
Like, MCU Matt Murdock cannot keep up with any of the villains that are about to show up.
Yeah.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
But back to Morbius. I really like this. I really like the aesthetic of the movie in the sense that it's dark, which kind of works because vampires live in darkness. They don't necessarily come out in the light.
It shares an aesthetic similarity to the other two Venom movies.
Yeah, but I think in this one, it's much more appropriate.
Yeah.
Because with Morbius being a vampire and this being a vampire movie and all, I feel that aesthetic fits more than with Venom. Because I felt a lot of Venom's aesthetic worked against it because sometimes it made it hard to see the symbiotes.
Only in the first movie, honestly.
There were some parts in the second movie I felt were a little difficult to see. Not as bad, though, as the first one. Good God.
It wasn't as noticeable.
Yeah, but I think Morbius, I think, will take advantage of this the best.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to see it. I am excited to see where his character will go. I know his character will be in the MCU. Like, I am confident that Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige came to a deal that these characters are going to be MCU canon, and that you can refer. And I think that this is how the deal works. They will appear in Spider-Man MCU movies. The events of their movies will be lightly referenced in other MCU properties, and that is it.
Yeah.
I don't, with the exception of Morbius showing up in Blade, I am convinced he will.
Okay. Well, I would like to move on because there's also another trailer that we do need to discuss.